Okay, so welcome to today's webinar. You are with the Learn to Swim team, and we are going to take you through rebuilding after COVID. For those of you who don't know our team yet, I'm Lauren Paget. I'm one of the Learn to Swim managers. I'll pass over to my two colleagues that I have with me today. One's actually my boss, not my colleague. So Katie, if I can just get you to introduce yourself.
We are colleagues, Lauren. There's no such thing. I just have to fill out your annual leave request and your sick return form. So, hi, I'm Katie Towner. I'm the head of Learn to Swim for Swim England, and I've just joined today because I keep hearing great things about my two members of the team, Lauren and Alex, and their webinars that they've been doing for you guys. So, thought I would jump on, and especially if there was any questions in relation to the Swim England guidance that have just been put out to give some support. So, morning all.
Hi there, my name's Alex. Great to see you guys again that have joined us for multiple webinars. Similar to Lauren, I'm a Learn to Swim manager as well. I'm based a little bit more northernly than Lauren. But yeah, we'll be taking you through this content today. And as I said, Katie's joined us today. So if there's a day you want to be nice, today's the day, please. So thank you for that. And hopefully you enjoy.
Oh, great shout, Alex. Yes, please. Those of you who are our regulars, do share the love today. As you know, if you've attended one of the webinars before, we will be recording this and we will be aiming to send you out a link. We also will aim to have a number of these webinars uploaded to our website as soon as possible. If we can just ask everybody to keep their microphone on mute, this just allows us for an easier, clearer delivery. If you do have any questions, there will be a Q&A opportunity at the end of today's webinar. So we do encourage people to come off mute then, and we'd love to chat to you guys. If you have any questions as we go through, we do have a chat box where a few of you have already started to chat away to us and ask questions this morning. So Katie, Alex and myself will be monitoring the chat box and we will pause and try and answer those as we go through. So again, just any of you who are new to us with the webinar rules and how we run, we've obviously just got a couple of simple rules there. So please no swearing or rude language. Do not use the annotate function, which we will not be using today. Do not share your screen unless you are asked to. Again, microphones on mute. And do direct your questions to the host in the chat box. This just, again, makes it a little bit easier to ensure we are answering them all. Any participant breaking these rules or disrupting the webinar in any way will be removed. And if you haven't heard of it before, it's definitely a 21st century thing. But if we have an unanticipated event or a Zoom bomb, we will close off the webinar and we will record it without an audience and get it out to you guys. So just a quick disclaimer. Swim England do not own or operate any pools or swim schools. Any information contained in this webinar is for guidance only. Anyone wishing to make changes to their existing Learn to Swim program should consult their manager or pool operator. Any changes you make should be in conjunction with the needs of your business and take into account the current climate. In the event of changes, we recommend reviewing your risk assessment. Okay, if I can just hand over to Alex, he's going to take you through a little bit more of our guidance, specifically around swimming lessons.
Awesome, thank you, Lauren. Okay, so if we could have the next slide, please. So as you may be aware, we launched our guidance on Monday the 15th. So it's been out just over a week now, and the guidance is there to support you reopening and getting back into the pool after the prolonged period during the lockdown. Now, what we wanted to do today is just start with where that guidance has come from, why we had the timeline in place, and who we've consulted with in order to make sure the guidance is as robust as possible. So the guidance has been developed in cooperation with industry partners such as UK Active, Public Health England and Sports England. So there's a real cross-section there to ensure that the guidance is as robust as possible. It is aiming to support operators in reopening their swim facilities following the period of closure due to COVID-19. Providers guidance on reducing risks related to COVID-19 transmission in the swimming pool environment. So we're really taking those government guidance and tailoring them and what that might look like in a leisure facility. It will highlight the continued requirements for safe social distancing and enhanced hygiene regimes, along with how this will impact operational management of swimming facilities. The guide will include details on getting pools back to operational requirements, certification, programming, understanding the new needs of users coming out of isolation, especially those in our communities that are the most vulnerable, and then also protecting and training the workforce. And one of those things that has come from the guidance is training such as today. Lauren, could we have the next slide, please? Now, what you will have access to multiple different documents that are tailored into specific areas of the industry and specifically around swimming to ensure that the guidance is relevant for you. Now, the guidance has been designed so that you can take the principles and relate them to your setting. Because we know, even on this call, we've got 106 participants today, which is a fantastic number. There'll be a variety of different operators on this call. There'll be people that work for big national operators. There'll be swim school owners. There'll be swimming teachers that might work for multiple different companies. So it's important that you can take the guiding principles and relate them to your audience and your setting. So the 5 key areas that we've designed our guidance in are aimed at operators, and that looks at the facilities as well. Users, swimming lessons, which is what we're going to be focusing on today. Community swimming, which will involve things like aquafit and those kind of instructor-led sessions, as well as things like lane swimming and stuff like that. And then finally, club swimming and club activity and how that's impacted. So for today's webinar, we're going to pull out specifically some of the key principles for swimming lessons. Now, you might be familiar with those as we're opening up all of our sessions with these guiding principles. And you'll be more familiar with these as time goes on. Now, again, it's for the challenge is to relate these back to your setting, whatever that setting may look like. So I'm just going to go through them now. So providers should have a dedicated officer responsible for COVID-19 considerations. So someone who can take lead and stay up to date with best practices and guidance. Now, we know there's potentially changes coming in the coming days or weeks from the government as we move through lockdown. So someone who can stay on the forefront of that and then relate back to your program. Teachers should deliver from poolside where possible and adhere to government guidance on social distancing. Again, we did a training session on delivering from poolside yesterday, and we've got more planned in the future. But that's one of the main recommendations to help enforce social distancing. Only one parent or carer per child should be allowed to supervise their child during swimming lessons. Providers should review available pool space to allow for correct social distancing and including the entries and exit points. So another piece of training we've done is around the pool layouts, and that includes entries and exit points. It's a real key kind of focal point of getting in and out of the pool. And you should also allow sufficient time between lessons for cleaning and to reduce the chance of clusterings on gatherings of groups. And then finally, where possible, teachers should remain in the same teaching station for the duration of their shift and aim to use the same equipment throughout. So they're the guiding principles, but the challenge is then to relate them back to your business, your setting, and your swim school and how that would look for you. Lauren, could we please have the next slide? So how we set out our guidance. So we want to make it as user-friendly and as useful for swimming teachers, operators, learn to swim leads as possible. So this is an example from one of the sections on our document. And what you'll see, we have our headline guidance, one of our key principles on the left-hand side, which is the ones we just went through on the previous slide. We then go forward to a detailed explanation of what we mean by this, and then the practical considerations that you need to incorporate in order to make this happen. So it might be things around risk assessments or additional training or support that you might need to do that. And then finally, we've got a column for training and resources. So these are resources, both digital, downloadable, videos, and training, such as today, and our teaching from poolside or effective communication that's coming up later in the week, of how you can adapt to these changes. So now when you do have questions, what you might find useful is if you have a look at those considerations, they may answer your questions in the way of thought starters that you can implement to your program. So that's an example of how all of our guidance is set out. And as the guidance from the government changes, we'll continue to update this, review, and make sure it's on the forefront of whatever the most up-to-date social distancing guidelines are. Lauren, if we could have the next slide, please. So one of the examples we've got is our pool layouts. Now, we've got a dedicated resource that's due to launch in the next couple of days around training and understanding each element. And although today we've not necessarily got time to go through each individual element, that training session that you can download will take you through that. However, just to highlight on here, we have chosen to pick pools that are 25 by 12.5 meters, but we know that's not necessarily what your setting is. So we've designed them with guiding principles for you to relate to your program. So we're not saying your pool has to look like this. What we're saying is there are principles embedded within our pool layouts that will help with social distancing in your setting. So for example, ensuring learners walk all the way around the pool in a consistent way, so they all walk clockwise, for example. Having a set entry and exit point. Considering your organizational methods, whether you're going to do random spacing, circuits, cannons, waves, whatever that might be, to ensure that you're up to date on those social distancing. So again, there'll be some more training that's available for that. You'll be able to download on our website in the near future. Lauren, if we could have the next slide, please. So we're following the pool layouts. We've got a suite of resources that are also available. So we've got our headline guidance, which will update and change. We've got our pool layouts and training videos to support them. We've got things such as temporary lesson structures, which are a very basic lesson plan with tips that you can consider for your first few lessons back in the water. So an emphasis on recovering and assessing outcomes, an emphasis on water safety, and emphasis on things such as entries and exits and pool rules, which we think are going to be really important. We've also got social media graphics that you can take and use for both Instagram, Facebook, whatever your organization may use, that reinforces social distancing and key principles for poolside. And then we've also got guidance for things such as clubs and all the other areas within our industry that you can also use if you're crossing over in multiple areas. In terms of the resources, we're going to continue to add, and in the future, you can expect more, and we'll adapt these as times move forward. Okay, so I'm now going to hand over to Katie, and we're going to start looking at some considerations that you need to embed and think about ahead of opening in the coming months.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, so we just wanted to take you through a few considerations, and some of you, again, if you're swim school owners on here or currently working for a provider, you've probably already started putting some notes down around this and started to think about what's going to happen. But there's some unknowns, and I know that makes it very difficult to plan. So there are a number of swim schools out there that we work with and providers that are looking at kind of a plan A and a plan B. So what would it look like if the government opened them now with the 2 metre social distancing rule? What could it look like in the future, and what other things could impact the type of pool program that you would go back to? So highlighted the government guidance, impact on schools returning as well. There are some schools that are looking to take their bubbles of 15 back to the pool if they're in walking distance of the pool. And there are some schools that know that if they're still within bubbles of 15, they're probably not going to be putting them on a bus to take them back to the pool as well. So again, if you're a pool that hires it out to a school, please talk to your local schools that normally hire your facilities and find out what they're planning to do, whether it would be come September that they're looking to come back and potentially what that could look like. Any travel restrictions as well? We know we have to wear masks, but will that impact on your customers and your clients coming in? Are they able to get the bus? What's your demographic look like? Do many people drive to the facility? Can they get the train? The potential to go back into lockdown. So what is plan B if the pools do have to close again? You know, how are you going to do that? What have you learned from the previous time of closing, and what could you do better? And what are we going to do if the pools are not able to reopen on the 4th of July, as we alluded to? At the moment, we still haven't had clarification of the 4th of July, and obviously the government haven't announced it. We've asked for a 3-week lead-in time from the DCMS to understand that we're going to open the pools, and if that wasn't announced last week, then I think it's highly unlikely that it is going to be the 4th of July, although we've got our fingers crossed. So it is very heavily dependent on government. I know that our CEO has written to Big Boris to try and push for a date, but we still don't have that yet. So we are still reliant on the government announcing those pools reopening. Next slide for me, please, Lauren. So when we're thinking about planning, start thinking about your timeline, but think pre your pool program. So when we talk about a timeline, what staff do you need in place? Have you communicated to your staff and your customers? So when we're thinking about staffing, have you had a conversation with your staff if they're currently on furlough or if you're self-employed? Are any of them in the shielded category? Are they able to come back onto poolside? Have they accessed the training from the Institute of Swimming and us to understand the environment that they're going back into? Do you need to start thinking about any training that you want to implement? So specific in-house training for your new setup, new pool layouts, new ways in which that people use the changing rooms and move around your facility. Really start planning your timeline for before those doors open. Do your lifeguards need to do a competency test? We've also got problems with the pool labs to make sure that the chlorine levels and your pool water is fine. So the pool testing companies, they're going to have a big influx once those pools are able to reopen. So there might be a delay. So even if we do get the go ahead to open the pools, actually, is your pool ready to go? Could you open the doors, or what do you need to do beforehand to be able to do it? So think about your staffing plan, who you're going to bring back first, especially if you're doing a phased approach to your swimming lessons. It may be that you might bring some of your higher stages back, or look at doing some crash courses, and which staff are you going to use to do that in the first instance. Also, if you're a mixed facility, so you've got a dry side gym or maybe some sports halls attached, what's the plan across the board to open the facilities? Because you're going to have pinch points again. If you've got multiple users coming to the facility at the same time, maybe they're coming in for a spin class and then you've got another 4 classes of swimming lessons coming in. To allow for social distancing, will your reception areas, your changing rooms and your corridors allow for social distancing to take place with that many people in your facility? So there's quite a lot to take into consideration before you've even looked at your pool programming or your swimming lesson program at that point. Think about your pool plant operations. I said we've covered that, and there's some information that we'll send out on PewTag for you guys. Obviously, we work very much in association with them. And then look at the private hires. So those of you that currently hire maybe hotel pools or school pools or private pools to run your swimming lessons out of, look at your terms and conditions of hire, because they're going to need to also make sure that they are COVID ready and COVID secure. So if any of you are hiring facilities, look at your terms and conditions and find out who's responsible for the cleaning of the changing rooms. They may ask you to provide a risk assessment of what you're going to do if you're using their facility. So you need to think about your risk assessments, not only for your changing rooms, your poolside, your parents, and within the pool. So there's a lot to start writing in advance there. So make sure you have those communications with the pools that you're hiring, and again, ensure that they're ready to open. Some of the smaller private pools may not even be aware that Swim England exists and that this support is there and available for them. We did some work pre-COVID when we knew the pools were going to close down with our guy called Richard Lamburn from Facilities that was supporting pools in closing down properly, so and hibernating the pools really for this period. And we know that some pools just literally walked away and flicked the switch. So getting those pools back up and running could take anything up to 4 to 6 weeks anyway. So please do have that conversation with the pools that you're hiring to include that in your mobilisation planning. Is there any questions on that? Or Alex, do you think that I've missed anything just before we move on to the PewTag?
So not any questions yet. We've just had someone kind of confirm that and say, yes, concerned about hotel pools potentially not being regulated and the differences that are there, which I think is a really valid point. That is different to, say, a leisure facility or a potential council run-off leisure centre. Yeah.
If you are, Sarah, if you're looking at those hotel pools, do get in contact, and if you want to push them in our direction, please do, and we'll make sure that they've got the information that they require at that point. So again, the reopening of the pool, there is PewTag guidance that is out there, and I'm sure we can get a link to that to you guys following this webinar. The timescales for reopening, I'm sure if any of you had read The Sun, The Guardian or the Daily Mail, where we had managed to ban butterfly and people were expected to stand in the corridors in their Speedos, that's not the case. We haven't closed changing rooms, we haven't closed showers, and we definitely haven't banned butterfly. But one thing that they did point out was how long the pools take to reheat. So if, again, you have one of these pools that the switch has been flicked and the temperature is really low to maintain, obviously, the environment in there, just make sure that you look at those timescales for reopening those pools. There could be plant breakdowns as well over this time, again, if it hasn't been maintained, and any unforeseen problems such as algae building up in those pools. So I think our main concern is more around those hotel and school pools that might not have been maintained during this period. So if you do need any further information or want to point any of your hirers in our direction, then please do so. We'll be able to help as and where we can.
Kate, we just had a question there that I think, because I know the chat box moves so quick when we've got hundreds on, but we just had a question around what are the considerations for open water swimming. Thank you for that question, Robin. And in answer to that, we have some open water swimming guidance that's published already. That published a lot earlier because it didn't have some of the same considerations, different ones, but not the same ones around, say pew tag and things like that. But there is actually on our website already, and I'll try and drop that in the chat box, some guidance live on that to support you open water swimming.
And the next question on there, are these guidelines for phase 1 only, phase 1 up until the 31st of August? These guidelines, we don't know, we can't put a timestamp on them. It's up to you guys. I would suggest in some of the providers that I've helped support recently is they're looking for timelines. If we did get the go ahead from the beginning of July, they would do phase 1 between now and September, when we've got a bit more of an idea of what the schools are going to do, and then put a plan in for September onwards if we don't obviously go into a second lockdown or any other considerations need to be taken into place at that point. I hope that answers that question. Next slide for me, please, Lauren. And as we said at the beginning, just around staffing, so notice period to furlough staff, making sure that you've worked that into your considerations. Any lifeguard training, so we are working quite closely with the RLSS, so they've produced 2 guidance documents, one for lifeguards and one for swimming teachers that are providing that lifeguard provision as well on how to perform safe rescues in a COVID environment. So again, we will get that into the chat box as well, so you've got the link to that. Staff who may have changed jobs, or I know there's a few members of staff that have gone to be delivery drivers or been redeployed in certain areas. So actually, are they able to come back when you want them to, or are they tied up working as a key worker or in other facilities? Looking at over 60s, any of your high risk workforce or anybody that has underlying health conditions. Now, I know from my days of running a swim school that not every swimming teacher was forthcoming with any underlying health conditions and would just come in and just crack on with their day. It is really important that if you are a swim school coordinator, you give people the opportunity to come to you to tell them about their concerns. And also if you're a swimming teacher and you have concerns, please again approach your swim school coordinator so we can work out the best method of getting you back onto the pool side. Have a think about any additional qualifications and skills that they might have learned throughout this period. Again, we've opened up all of our webinars for free, and Institute Swimming have done a number for free as well. If not, there's a few between £15 and £35. So there's been loads of training opportunities that you can take part in, and anything specific to the COVID-19 environment has been free from both Swim England and the Institute of Swimming. Some of those webinars I appreciate are fully booked. We had 4,000 bookings within 48 hours of getting those live on our website. We did open up some more opportunities, and what we're going to do at the end of them is actually record them, put them all together and then give them as a training resource. So any of you guys can't get on them, or any of your teachers can't get on them, they will be available for you to view after we finish the suite by the end of next week. And then have a look at your COVID-19 closures and cancellations. So have a look at your direct debits. Who's cancelled? What communication have you had with those parents? And is it starting to now think about remobilisation? What information do you want to give to your parents about the environment that they're coming back into? And correct me if I'm wrong, Alex and Lauren, we've got something about that coming up in a bit. Yeah.
Yes.
Fabulous. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next slide. So retaining, oh, there it is, right there. It was next. Review pre-closure customer communication. So what communication was given to your customers prior to closing? What communication is currently available on your websites and your social media channels? Have a look. A lot of customers have gone through and cancelled a lot of direct debits, but actually some of them, if they knew that it had been frozen earlier on, or they still understand it's frozen and it could still be frozen moving forward until their child is able to come back, do give those phone calls to those that have cancelled and reinstate them, so when there is a position available for themselves or their child, they're able to come straight back in. Have a look at crash courses. So again, if you can't think of a way of bringing back your full swim school because your pool space and social distancing simply won't allow it, look at other ways in which that you can program your facilities. We've had some great ideas coming out of some of these webinars doing family swimming lessons. We've had crash course ideas, one-to-one ideas, different disciplines for crash courses, so diving, synchronized swimming, or water polo. So there are other ways in which you might want to look to program your facility just between now and whenever we're able to open up to full capacity. So don't think you need to reopen with what you left with. You know, your cards are blank now. You can start again. You can start to have a look at what is your demographic, what would work well. Could you bring in different social groups and teach them as a whole, rather than your normal kind of 4 till 6 parents coming through, if you have the ability to program a pool from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, or if you are a smaller swim school that only has a certain number of hours, actually start having a look at what you could facilitate and is it financially viable for you to do that. Look at discounts and different incentives as well. And then we've just got a couple of questions on here, and I'm not sure whether people have started looking at them in the chat box. But you know, let's throw some ideas. Where do you think your main losses from your program will be? So that will be that lower end or the higher end. Where are you starting to see maybe some of those drop-offs? And have you done anything exciting so far to retain any of those learners during this period? Just while you're typing, we've had a question as well. Which CPDs and webinars do you feel should be done by the swimming teachers before returning to teaching? That I would suggest that they must, it's not a webinar, but they must read the Swim England guidance, both the operator and the swimming lesson one. I would suggest also that we, when we put the 3 CPDs together, we have teaching from the poolside, teaching in deep water, and effective communication. If they haven't been able to book onto any of those, that you actually point them in that direction when we put them up as a recording, for them to listen to those as well. So we've just had another question around, can we handle special needs one-to-ones? Okay, so with the government give the guidance on social distancing. So right now at the moment, and if it goes down to 1 metre, anybody from outside your household, you need to remain socially distant from. You cannot go near anybody that is not from within your household or from within your bubble right now. So anybody that requires manual support, and you cannot give them either fixed flotation equipment or they cannot bring a carer in to help support that child or that participant, then you wouldn't be able to touch them because they're outside of your bubble. PPE doesn't work in a swimming pool. When it gets wet, it's null and void. So again, just because the social distancing is set by government, you wouldn't be able to manual handle any of your swimmers right now. You need to look at alternative ways in which to support them.
Just start to have a little bit of feedback, Katie, about, I think in relation to the question, what have you done to retain swimmers? And we've got Lisa who said we've put out a couple of videos through social media, one silly one around Baby Shark and another one around Drown Prevention Week. I really like that. I definitely can't sing Baby Shark right now because it'll be in my head all week, but I like that you've done that for your swimming lesson members. That's really good. Keep them engaged. We've also got some top tip videos on our website that you're welcome to share and reuse if that's useful, around overcoming top tips for parents. So that might be something you can use as well. Ben, thank you for your feedback. We've been fortunate at the moment not to have a drop off due to quick freeze. Comms and regular kit newsletters, videos from the team, and personal touches such as postcards from our members. Ben, that sounds fantastic. I think if your members are receiving that level of communication during the lockdown and pandemic, I think they're going to return, and that's really, really good to see.
I like that one from Jules. They're going to suggest that their staff also check their safeguard training is up to date. There's some online safeguarding available through the Institute of Swimming as well if it's not. Sorry, I sound like I'm in an aviary. The birds have just come in.
Peaceful. Like.
Yeah, Gary, the operator we used, sent out a survey via SurveyMonkey. Great. And there was also a LeisureNet survey as well that went out to some of the customers around customer confidence that we'll touch on a bit later. Great. Okay, we're going to move on to the next slide. Thank you for your feedback. Over to you, Alex, I think, for your top tips.
Yeah, so what this one was around, so this is kind of part 2 of our rebuilding after COVID, and we talked about some of these tips before, and this is specifically aimed around online systems, home portals, things like that, because we know that's going to be really key to adapting that system to make sure you've got your learners back. So we've got a couple of top tips that we've collaborated as a team from. So for your computer system, ensure that everything's set up. If you're going to lessons that are a different setup, whether they're no longer weekly, whether you're going to fortnightly or doing crash courses or something like that, then it's important that your system's set up correctly. So check and challenge that, get in touch with your providers and make sure that is one thing you don't have to worry about once everything reopens. Are you got enough badges and stock and everything you need to start off with again to get those learners motivated? And is the system ready for changing those? Learners may have progressed or they may have regressed during the lockdown. So it's important to consider how you engage them and get them back motivated. If you use Home Portal, have you got your home triggers set up correctly? And I know this is something we talked about before, but those triggers that automatically email your customers, if you've got that system set up, are they accurate? Are they relevant? And have they been updated with your new policies or your new changes or your new time slots? Because otherwise there may be some confusion from your partners. Your Learn to Swim portal or our Swim England's Just Swim app, how does that affect your customers? Can that be used to enhance and support communication? Now, you might not use Home Portal specifically, but however you're communicating with customers, consider a bit of a check through, consider challenging it and making sure it's ready to accept those learners back. Are your staff comfortable and familiar with moving people around your program? So consider using this lockdown time and when you start to bring staff back to make sure that they've got the skills you want them to have. So are they able to move people up into new clusters? Are you able to service any waiting lists? I spoke to a partner the other day who's still getting inquiries daily, even though they're in lockdown. So what can we do to move those people in an appropriate class? Can the system fit for that? And do you need any additional training now to prepare you when you're in the throes of opening up after lockdown? So just think about, really, our top tip there is just think about reviewing your system. You may use paper-based registers and email people. You may have triggers set up. You may use something like Learn2 or Course Pro or Swimfini. Check them so that when you get back in the water, that's one thing you don't have to worry about and your systems are ready to get those comms out. Because I think one thing I've learned during the lockdown, whether it be going to the local shop or getting updates, is that communication has been key. I know as a consumer exactly what I'm walking into and what I need to do. So consider how you can do that for your Learn Swim customers. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, so some of the good news. So there's a lot of considerations we've talked about today, but we do feel there are some good news stories that can and will come out of this lockdown. Some positive things that with the right approach could have good benefits moving forward. And we've approached our webinars and our training and the support we're giving in a similar format. So are there any new opportunities? So given that customers are aware of what's happening, given that customers are involved in these kind of COVID changes in all areas of their life, what can you do that will allow some new opportunities and you can utilize that to move forward? So think about those new opportunities. Now, it could be new areas, as you can see on the bottom of the slide, in preschool or Learn to Swim, or maybe you'll focus on your post-stage 7 because maybe they can come back in the water earlier and there's opportunities to grow your program there. So think about, are there any new opportunities for your lessons, new changes, new ratios that you can embed now that are best practice moving forward? Customers will be expecting there to be differences when they come back. So is now the time to make those timetable changes? You've been wanting to move lessons half an hour earlier, or you've been wanting to introduce a new activity, or get rid of something that's maybe not as popular and replace it for something new and exciting. So is now the time to do that? Can you do that now and test some of your ideas while customers are coming back? So take that time just to kind of think around that. Think about your pool layouts. We've given some examples and we'll have some additional training on that. But how might the new pool layouts lead to adaptive teaching? So for example, if you now start doing your preschool or your lower stages of the Learn to Swim program in deep water, what positive effects could that have in terms of helping them with their core aquatic skills and helping them move through the program quicker? Is the new opportunity for school or private hires, given that some pools, as Katie said in her section, might not have reopened, they might not be opening yet. So is there a chance for new business? Can you consider gaining new customers? Can you embed a crash course? So before you fully reopen, is there an opportunity to embed a crash course and get learners active, swimming and involved way before they move forward? And then finally, what have your staff learned during this time? So there's lots of staff on this call that we've spoke to week in, week out, and it's great to see you again. But we hope that you've got a significant amount of new skills and new ideas, fresh game ideas. Certainly guys that have engaged with us, you've come on and given us some fantastic ideas to go away with. So how can you share that with your operator or your provider or your line manager and implement some of those new things you've learned when you start back in the pool? Lauren, could we have the next slide, please? So Gary alluded to it earlier in the comments box, so thank you for that his partner did his own survey, and I know a few people will have found the same. But one of the things that has happened across the country is a survey from LeisureNet. Now there's over 47,000 respondents that were emailed and therefore replied and gave their feedback. Now the exciting news here is the perception initially of what parents are approaching coming back to the water. So just over half of respondents said that they would return immediately. Now for me, I think that's really exciting, given some of the kind of social media and the training and things like that you've seen around schools and returning to pubs or whatever it might be. 50% of parents are saying, yes, I would like to come back. And I think that's good news for us, especially as you phase and bring things back slowly. And then the further 45%, so we've nearly got the whole 100% there, are saying that they would come back in September. Now that might be what you're planning towards anyway. You might be planning your crash courses or something in the interim, and then full program in September. That might be your plan. So I think that's really encouraging that that's what the parent perception is currently, and that's only going to improve as we move forward through the lockdown. It also says that 75% of parents wish for their children to stay in their current class to get back up to the standard and then be assessed and moved into classes more appropriate for their ability. So I think that's really interesting when you're considering those first lessons back and how you might plan your sessions. And we're going to ask you for your feedback in a moment. And there's also an interest in intensive swimming classes during the summer holidays. So 55% of parents, and of the 55%, there's 67% in addition to weekly lessons and 33 instead of weekly lessons. So you can see there, that's thousands, tens of thousands of people that are saying, I would happily come during the summer holidays for an intensive crash course to get back in the water, back familiar, and then look at swimming lessons in full in the future. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity for providers to think about, to test your ideas out, to test your pool layouts out, and to test your new ways of working. So I think that's something to consider as you move forward. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, so one of the other things, and guys, partly that is down to you guys on the call, is that our Swim England community has grown during lockdown. So a time when we can't get in the pool and we can't see each other and we can't travel around the country and can't go swimming, the community around Swim England has grown, which is absolutely fantastic. So we've got a dedicated Facebook group and we're looking at more ways in the future we can expand that. That's got over 9,500 people engaged with now, and that there's regular feedback through there. So that's fantastic. We've got over 7,000 free places on webinar so far, and that's not including ones that are coming in the next couple of weeks as well. So that number is only going to grow. We have fortnightly coffee chats, which is an opportunity for you to come and engage with us. And we're going to continue those because they've been a great opportunity to find out more about what you're doing. So as you think about being some of the guys on the call, you might end up being that dedicated COVID officer, as it were, that person taking all the information and feeding it on. Those weekly coffee chats are there for you guys to come on and ask us some questions and challenge some of our thinking. The guidance will change. The guidance will update. We've already made some amends as the government guidance has developed and changed, and we'll continue to do so. And if the announcement is changed to 1 metre, then our guidance will reflect that. And then we've also got a suite of digital resources for operators and swim teachers, and they're not going anywhere. They're available for you, and they will continue to be added to in the future. So you've got a suite of resources to help you get back in the pool. Lauren, if we could have the next slide, please. Thank you very much. Just see a few questions coming in there around the coffee chat. As I put in the group, thank you for those guys. If you just go onto our website, we can put the link in, but they're just on our website. They're an open link. Just come and join us, and that's something we'll be continuing to do moving forward. It's just an open link, and we can all have a conversation on there.
I believe we have one this Thursday, Alex, at about 1:30, off the top of my head. So if anybody does want to jump in on those coffee chats, that is hosted by myself and Alex. And like Alex said, it is just an open kind of forum to throw ideas around. So yeah, do check that out. Thanks,
Lauren. And also, one of the things that has worked really well, and we're hoping to continue to look at moving forward, is our training. So we've continued to do level 1s and level 2s and adapted to this lockdown and do them online. And I know a few people that have been engaging on webinars are halfway through, so that's fantastic. As new teachers, you're getting all this training. And we've also got a suite of webinars, training that will be recorded and on our website in the future, and we can send those to you. And we're going to continue to look at how we can adapt to this new age and to support you, because we're getting 100, 104 people on this call at the minute. And to continue to have these conversations as a group is fantastic. So what can we do to keep this going? And we hope that we'll continue to engage with you, and you can continue to learn from each other and develop as you get back into the pools. Next slide, please, Lauren.
This is me talking to you guys about rebuilding your program. Sorry, Alex, we had a couple of questions just ping into the chat box, and if you could find the coffee chat link for me as I start talking through this section and drop it in, that would be great. I also saw another question that I just wanted to touch on. Steffi, we're planning to run 1-to-1s or 2-to-1s and crash courses during July and August, only before starting group lessons in September. Up to what age would you advise have a parent carer to supervise a child? What are your thoughts on beach change? Sorry for the questions. First of all, never apologise. Second of all, in this current situation, if you look at a group or if you look at a child or 2 siblings, and ultimately you think they're going to benefit from that parent being in the water, then I don't think we can put an age on it. I wouldn't want to put an age on it. And I would say treat it case by case. And as long as that child is benefiting from that support in the water, then go down that route. And remember, you can review and change these decisions as you go as well. And what might work for one child, one of your swimmers, might not work for another. So be as open-minded as possible. The second question then from me, Steph, was what are your thoughts on beach change? We obviously have put it in as one of our main considerations, and we think it is a great approach to kind of minimize that time spent in changing rooms. You can avoid changing rooms a little bit more. We're huge advocates of a beach style change. So hopefully that answers those questions for you, Steffi.
Lauren, can I just jump in on just with the parents, because I think this question might pop up. We had it in the previous one around, do parents require a DBS check to support in a group environment? And they don't, because they will only be supporting their child under the supervision of the level 2 teacher. So as long as they are only supporting their child, they do not require a DBS check, but it does need to be made very clear to the parent that they can only support their child. And also, if you're only having one parent in because you identify that one child needs some support, make sure you can communicate that with the rest of the class so they know what's going to be expected of why there is an adult in the water at that point.
Thanks, Casey. That is a great add-on. I always forget that one. So yeah, thank you for picking that up. Okay, guys, so let's have a bit of a conversation. We know we've got over 100 of you on today's webinar, but we'd really like to know your thoughts. So let's go with the first question on the left. currently, at this moment in time, what are your main aims of your lessons when you return to the water? Fire away, go in that chat box, give me some ideas. What are you looking at doing?
I must say, I know, I was just about to pick up on that one. Going first one in there, fun. I love that.
Definitely, we cannot let COVID change the fun approach of the lessons that, you know, we strive to achieve with these swimmers. They still need to be enjoying the water. We do not want them to come back and be worried. So definitely fun. That has made my day that was the first comment. Vicky, getting children back in the water safely, absolutely. Head over to our resources. We have got that resource of topic areas that will help you decide what topic areas, what aims and objectives you're going to pop in for those first couple of weeks, including that water safety. That is key. Get swimmers back safely, use crash courses. Yeah, think outside the box, 100%. Gary, make sure they feel safe in this new environment. Absolutely. Assess current ability, do lots of games. We always say, do games, but have a purpose. Always have a purpose with those games. So it's got that structured approach. That's brilliant, Fran. And parent reassurance. Do you know what? You have hit the nail on the head there, Fran. Our parents and our customers are going to be just as concerned as and actually probably even more so than the children. So we have to open up that communication. We have to make sure that they understand and that they're reassured of how these lessons are now going to look in this new world.
A few people saying about those reassessment of skills and making sure I know where those learners are at. I think there's a presumption that learners might have progressed, they've not been in the water. But some might have matured and got older and got in a new age bracket. Some might be stronger and might have moved forward. They might be doing a lot of exercise in lockdown. So yeah, definitely reassess. And if you can couple that with a game and fun and engaging, and then you're on for a real good first lesson back.
So guys, I'm just aware of the time. So let's just flip over to the other question. Have you had a thought of which area of your program you're the most confident about restarting? What is going to be the easiest to embed and communicate? Would it be preschool? Would it be one-to-one? Would it be your higher stages? So just again, just drop it in the chat box what you're thinking of. This is just a really good way to bring the community of swimming teachers together and just share each other's ideas and thoughts. So Anna's gone straight in and said, you're thinking preschool in smaller groups with lessons. Yeah, definitely. And don't be afraid to ask for that parental support in those lessons as well if you feel you need it. So group hire, somebody said actually getting swimming clubs back in, 100%. There's reasoning for each thought and there's no right or wrong answer. So definitely. Julie, smaller lessons, absolutely. Smaller lessons, higher stages, I can see that from Denise and Erin. Fran, you're going in with restarting everything, but on reduced group size. That's brilliant. Lisa, higher stages and one-to-ones, but concerned in terms of financially viable. 100%. We completely understand that as well, Lisa. And that's where we say there's no right or wrong answer here. It's having a look at how financially viable a phased return is and how that looks specifically to your pool, to your swim school. Lots of one-to-ones. Linda, you're starting one venue at a time. Great phased approach as well if you go over multiple venues. Crash courses. Trying to keep up with the inbox. Yes, so Anna, you said start with the higher stages because you feel the communication and the understanding that you will need to communicate with the children. They're going to understand how to social distance and they're going to follow instructions a lot easier, definitely.
We've just got Sophie, you've got your hand raised in the participant box. Did you want to pop yourself off mute and ask a question?
Sorry, press wrong button. Sorry.
No worries. I just didn't want you to think we've forgotten you. We could see you.
No, sorry.
Okay, so this is just an idea. They're all thought starters. As I previously mentioned, it's not going to be one size fits all. So maybe crash course, maybe stages kind of from 5 upwards. Maybe then you can go on to reintroducing your stages 1 to 4 in your preschool, and then you can then introduce school swimming. This is just an idea, and this is really going to be down to the individual site, individual swim school, and what you feel is financially viable for you and your swimmers. Communicate with your customers and be honest with them. Make sure that you are flexible, because we know that the government guidance and our Swim England guidance can change, as we don't know what the times ahead look like. If we did, we would be shouting about it, I'm sure. So another really exciting addition to the Learn to Swim framework, we have the Water Safety Awards, which are great for your children to really venture into something new when they come back to the water. These are 3 new awards that sit alongside stage 3, stage 5, and stage 7 in the Learn to Swim framework. So do go over to our website and check these out. These are going to be a really key extra topic, because they've been away from the water for a long period of time. So definitely check these out. Alex, if you can drop the link in the chat box for these, that would also be fab. So have a think of your sales plan as well. You still need to go back in with a plan in place. How did it look pre-COVID? How does it now need to look post-COVID? Do you need to do any sales, or actually have you got all your students returning to you and you don't really have a demand at the moment for sales? Maybe if you are going back with a phased approach, you don't have the space to bring on new swimmers. However, there could be the complete opposite. You may now need to be picking up those sales because you've had such a drop off. Again, it comes hand in hand with sales, so outreach, in-reach. So how are you using social media? A couple of you already earlier dropped in some ideas of how you're staying engaged with your current swimmers. And ideally, we want all your current swimmers to be returning to you. But this isn't necessarily the situation or realistic situation for every swim school out there. So you need to start shouting about the fact that you are reopening once you get that date, once you get that confirmation, and once you have your plan in place. How will that look? Can you offer free swim assessments? Can you do a refer a friend scheme? Can you do any of those ideas down there and actually continue to do them all year round to encourage those sales of your swim school? Alex, have we got a couple of questions in the inbox? Did you want me to pause there at all?
So we've got 2. I think if you go through the next few bits, then we'll come back to the questions at the end, because I think you might answer 1 or 2 of them in the next couple of bits. So
fab. So guys, if you've been on any of our webinars before, we talk about this sales cycle. So as you go back into your post-COVID swim school kind of world, don't forget to still continue to pick up this element of sales. We still need to be continuing to drive new sales and new swimmers into our swim school. So we think about Monday movements, Wednesday's waiting lists, Fridays are for Facebook or social media, depending on what platform you choose to use, and weekend win backs. So this will help your swim school have a flow and have a focus, so that every day of the week you have something to focus on. Again, think about waiting lists. This might be so far from your mind right now, but you still need to accept that some people will need to come back in. And have they cancelled their DD and now they don't have a slot with you and they actually need to go on a waiting list? So this is something that you definitely need to think about running as you phase that return to your swimming lessons in. This will help you to run your swim school financially as efficiently as possible. If you can't fit a customer into a class, put them on a waiting list, but make sure you take their full availability and details. You can then put on new classes where you have demand. This phased return is really going to create a different approach to delivering your swimming lessons. Again, do you have a demand for something that you didn't originally deliver? So maybe rookie, have a look at that, collect that data, collect that interest, and launch a new offer. Record all contact with the waiting list. If they don't come back to you, remove them and move on. If you are using a computer system, only have people who are not on your swim school on this waiting list. People on your swim school who are waiting to move up or to a different class should be on a movements list. Again, you guys might be thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not even thinking about waiting lists. I'm not thinking about sales. You know, I need to get my swimmers back in the pool. But ultimately, do you know which swimmers are returning to you? Because if that is not your full cohort of swimmers that you had pre-COVID, you need to start implementing these so that you can rebuild those numbers. And increase in secondary spend. Let's have a look at this as another element. One of our considerations in our guidance is actually encouraging swimmers to bring their own equipment, whether it's arm discs, whether it's shark fins, aquaplanes. Can you encourage those swimmers to purchase and come along to their lessons with their own? Still ensure that those learners are awarded the right badges at the right time. We know this is key to retaining those swimmers. Can you offer swim school discount for costumes and goggles? Remember, in our guidance, one of our considerations is to not loan out goggles or hats anymore. Can you go down the route of crash courses or straight workshops? If you are not bringing back a certain stage, can you offer them something for the interim? And think about those private lessons as well. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time today, guys. We are going to go through a couple of the questions, and yeah, just any questions, drop them in the chat box. If you would like to come off microphone, just raise your hand, and then we can come to you and you can chat to us. Okay. Alex, did you have any questions that flagged earlier as I was presenting, or?
So Katie's kindly answered one around, so the question was, would you put a limit on the number of school swimmers in a 25 by 12.5 metre pool? And Katie's come back with saying, we're working on a 6 metre squared per swimmer. So your capacity is dependent on the size of the pool. In 12.5 times 25, you could have 50 swimmers, but it doesn't allow for lanes or teaching stations. Check out our pool layouts and the guidance, which will help your planning. Again, we've also got that training that will help you relate those outcomes as well. Bit of feedback from someone saying communication is important. If people aren't returning, why not? And can you overcome that potential barrier that's there? And I think that, just a question, are we sharing these slides?
Yes.
Post-webinar?
Yeah, I will. The slides won't be shared. The recording of the three of us presenting will be shared. It has been recorded, and that will be sent out to you. So yes, definitely.
A few people saying transport, school swimming, probably that's referring to there. Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be one of those external factors out of your control we talked about at the beginning that might pose a real challenge for you.
What is the SE Learner record that was on the last slide? Was that this one, I'm assuming? So it's where they can put their rewards in. So it's a really nice file that as they get a certificate, it's just got a slot for each certificate. So again, go over to our Swim England shop and you'll find them there. They're really, really lovely. Gary, sorry, I can see you've raised your hand. Do come off mute, Gary, and have a chat with us.
Yeah, so we've got our meeting tomorrow, funny enough. Now,